In today's webinar, what you need to do to prepare for UL testing of a vape device, you will learn the following: the UL certification process, how the authorized mark can be used, and what types of documentation you will need to prepare for the testing. I would like to introduce today's speaker, Art Creidler. Art is a business development expert. He has worked closely with electronic vaping device suppliers to promote electrical safety and brand protection of e-cig and vaping devices. In addition, Art is exploring new market spaces within optical verification services and printed wiring board reliability. Art joined UL after an extensive career at DuPont as the program manager for Prilex, a line of high-performance electronic circuit materials used for autos, industrial, and aerospace applications. It's all yours, Art.
Thank you, Tana. I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who's taking time out to join us today. We really appreciate your interest and send out our best from all of us here at UL in this unique time. Okay, jumping right in. And I'm going to go ahead and put up a pointer that I will use for part of this. So if you see the little red dot, there you go. All right, so today's webinar is actually the natural follow-up to last month's presentation on why you would want to pursue UL8139 safety certification for your electronic vaping device. If you missed it, we have it posted on our website, and contact info will be shown again at the end of today's discussion. So again, we wanted to follow up the why you would certify with how to actually do it. Like most large companies, we realize that UL may appear to be something of a black hole at first glance. This can especially be true of electronic vaping manufacturers who may be seeking safety certification for the very first time. But we assure you that there are names and faces on the other side of that UL doorway who can assist in every step. My goal today is to give you an overview of the certification journey. So in this slide, we wanted to just highlight the 4 phases of what we're going to talk about today. And actually the first one is possibly one of the very most important, so we'll hit that well, is when you get ready and decide you want to move forward, you're going to submit your products and information to our UL engineering staff. That leads into the actual investigation and the testing phases that, as you will see, is extremely comprehensive, and it's very interactive back with our customers. The payoff would be if with successful completion of 8139, you would be in a position to authorize to use the UL mark on your product line. And then finally, an ongoing field service inspection would happen at the manufacturing location. So I'll talk about each phase and give you an overview of what you can expect as a client and how to best prepare for evaluation support and timing efficiency on the evaluation. All right, UL8139 was developed as a US and Canadian binational standard back in 2017 as a comprehensive safety evaluation for battery management systems in electronic vaping devices. Data continues to show electrically related incidents involving e-devices are growing proportionally with global demand. Although relatively rare, these incidents in the form of fire and explosion failures can result in life-changing consequences. As we like to emphasize at UL, e-cigs and vaporizers are not just other personal electronic devices. You put them in your mouth. So UL8139 addresses these critical safety issues for both the OEM and downstream users. There are many projections from market segment experts on peak revenues as a whole over the next 4 to 6 years, but there's no argument that growth as of today has been dramatic and global. And then you can kind of see that here on the chart, numbers aside, the trends are the same. Down here in the lower map, it points out the high-level picture of market hotspots and anticipated demands in the next few years. As we all know, this is a very dynamic view due to a complex network of regulatory, legal, and regional variables. But the general consensus is that Americas, Canada, Europe, Eastern Europe, and Russia are the hottest demand regions, but global activity is clearly on the rise across the rest of the world, including China, which is the manufacturing hub. As you may consider 8139 certification from UL it is really important, and we like to stress this to have a clear view of the scope. So UL 8139 is very specific. It addresses the safety in electrical systems, and I'll use this term along the way, the BMS, battery management system, which includes the chargers, charging cables, circuits, and controls. So we're looking at battery safety, electrical shock, and fire hazard only. What we don't talk about in 8139 are the consumables and what type those may be, and also the biological effects. We'll leave that to the doctors and the experts as part of their submissions. Getting some attention these days are potentially, I want to say, contaminants, substances in the emissions, and we also do not cover that currently. A major player in the total electronic vaping industry is actually the other chemistry, which we refer to as legal cannabis. And legal cannabis is on a similar growth projection as all vaping devices, and you know, numbers can be looked at and argued, but the rise is dramatic. This includes medical or recreational usage. It includes a number of devices, vaporizers, pens, and of course all the formats of cannabis, oils, dry herbs, and other things that are being looked at as consumables. But the bottom line is that independent of the consumable, a lithium-ion battery cell is the device power source and presents a unique set of risks and design needs to deliver a safe product to the end consumer. So in the first webinar, we discussed in detail why a UL 8139 certification benefits both the manufacturer and the end user. It really comes down to 4 key drivers for that. First one obviously is risk mitigation, health risk and liability. Second one is counterfeit prevention, brand protection for the OEM and retailers. And then it just comes down to, in a world where there's so many products out there, how do you differentiate your product? And UL 8139 certification is one way to do that. The UL holographic label shown here can be applied to your OEM device packaging after 8139 compliance is earned and represents the highest level of battery management system safety available today. A little about the label itself. Standard size is 5/8 by 7/8 inch, making it compatible with most OEM packaging. The label is highly engineered and serialized for security against duplication and counterfeiting, and all that magic really takes place in this area of the label. There are levels of security that are very protected here. But multiple layers of proprietary security technology are incorporated in state-of-the-art design, as mentioned, and many global money mints are using similar technology, so it's state-of-the-art. I also wanted to say that UL is now rolling out a new track and trace feature that can also incorporate further authentication safety, supply chain inventory control, and other information capability. Please contact us. We're not going to get into too many details about that today, but please contact us for more information on the label itself or the supply logistics. So power demands for vaping devices typically require cells to deliver anywhere from 1,500 to greater than 4,000 milliamp hours for performance cycle demands. At the heart of most devices is lithium-ion battery cell technology, as you know. This would be the first key assessment for a vaping device evaluation. Although there are a number of cell certifications available, UL 8139 requires either a UL62133 or UL1642 certification as the building block for the comprehensive system evaluation. If a device is not submitted with necessary cell certification, our UL engineers will flag this in a needs assessment right up front and discuss available options, which may include alternative cell specification or parallel recertifications to UL criteria. So lithium-ion power cells for vaping devices are different from other personal devices, and variability in production or substandard cell design can increase failure risk. And that's one of the reasons we are so we have those demands on our starting points for 8139 evaluation. So just a note. I think this is really understood by all the OEMs, all the manufacturers. But thermal runaway is the core concern with electronic devices, and really it must be evaluated from a systems vantage point versus individual component levels. For vaping devices, there are a number of heating and electronic design variations. In the lithium-ion cell, overheating and possible ignition of the liquid electrolyte separating the anodic and cathodic electrodes can result in fire and explosion. That's the fear. Lockdown of the battery cell to UL1642 or 62133 as a core requirement to the UL8139 BMS evaluation does enable the system safety evaluation of the end product electronic device and critical subsystems. And we talked about those, the battery pack chargers and all the mechanical compatibility. So these are the key points that we look at as the system itself. 8139 evaluation details were covered in our first webinar, so I will very briefly touch on it here to remind the listeners of the evaluation cross-section that a submitted device will undergo. And it is extremely comprehensive. As a whole, this is an overview, but we look at the introduction of the device and make sure that we understand that. Then we look at the physical construction, the ratings, the markings, the instructions that you would give as normal operating conditions to the users. And then I have this one redlined, and I'm going to look at it in the next slide just a little bit more, because this is the key area of performance that makes or breaks the safety of the device. So the expanded view of the performance test details are shown here on slide 15. And as you can see, comprehensive test regimes are designed to evaluate device safety in both normal and every type of foreseeable misusage scenarios that an end user might encounter. This includes the testing that includes venting, mechanical, water exposure, thermal shock testing, electrical discharging, specific fault responses, and charging compatibility. So let me go to the venting test here just for a second, because this is one of the hardest tests to get through with UL8139. It's a critical evaluation, and it is really one of the historically most difficult tests to pass, as I just mentioned. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. Oops. Actually, I apologize. We're just out of order a little bit. So I'm going to move on here. The next couple slides are focused on nicotine-based devices only for the PMTA applications into the FDA. As you know, PMTA stands for pre-market tobacco application. And really the picture on this is in July 2019, there was an order from a district court put out that had PMTA submission date by May 12th, 2020. Of course, we're past that today. That created quite a stir and quite a lot of activity level as people moved very quickly to try and meet that date, which was looming. Due to COVID-19, actually it was May 11th, they came out, FDA, and they have moved the new deadline now to September 9th, 2020. It's 120 extra days of work that can be done in terms of PMTA preparation, and that is the new date. So the other portion I wanted to point out on the FDA, and we covered this in the last webinar as well, is that they came out with a landmark guidance statement in November of 2019. It was the first time that they broke the logjam, the FDA logjam on devices that were in the system already. And I just wanted to give you the overview of what that said. And essentially, the guidance revisions changed the compliance policy and allowed manufacturers to make safety-based product changes. Their intent was to give clarity to the manufacturers around the BMS safety recommendations. And for the first time, they actually called out UL8139 and made this last statement that says FDA believes compliance with UL8139 will make vaping devices safer from fire and explosion risk. So what happens when you reach out to UL about certification for your electronic device? So the first thing that would happen that you would see is you would be in contact with knowledgeable UL sales or a BD specialist like me to talk with you. There'd be a dialogue to follow up and understand your evaluation needs. And at the same time, we consider options. Each device is different and recommend best path forward. Once a quote request came in, the UL project planners would look at that and request formal engineering needs assessment and quotation for your project. And then to get into the system, essentially, all you would have to do is respond back and accept the quotation, and that would give you project acknowledgement letter that is generated. It would define ULTAT, which is turnaround time, and you get a letter and a lock-in date on when your project would be completed. And then I think the most important thing, and it's highlighted here, you get precise sampling and documentation needs that would be required to get started. The sample needs would be addressed with a TAT letter and a companion shipping form that would be sent out that you would use for sample submission. It would go directly into a file and directly into the engineer's hands who will be working on your project. So every device is different. You and your manufacturer are the design experts on your product and its usage. We cannot stress enough that client readiness to provide the required test samples and documentation is what enables optimal evaluations of efficiency and timing. So essentially what this says is we're going to ask for very critical information and samples, and at UL, as you accept a project, you move into a queue and you're in line, you're officially recognized, and nobody else is going to bump you out of that line. But our clock in terms of the evaluation and turnaround time will start with getting in hand the appropriate samples and documentation information. So this is a really important part of the initial phases of the 8139 certification. So as mentioned, e-device evaluation needs may differ with OEM project status, global market targets, or other third-party testing needs. This chart pulls together the primary evaluation services for electronic devices that we've seen at UL. It's not everything, but covers about 90%. This is a good reference for new potential projects and first discussions with UL. And essentially, this is the service menu, if you will. And I won't go into any details here, but the options are preliminary reviews that may essentially be very valuable, and we highly recommend these for devices that are in the design pipeline. We can get a look up front and help with feedback in terms of what would be needed for UL evaluation and successful certification. Some devices are out there already, so moving straight into UL8139 is the best option, and or potentially a 60335-1 CB evaluation, which we also do for EU appliance product market entry, self-declaration for the CE mark. For customers who aren't sure, we do offer some bundled services, putting these together because we kind of do them in a parallel path, and that's a good way to go, especially if it's one of the very first devices or you're a new client of UL. And then we also, even though this is not part of UL 8139, I'll talk with this at the end, we look at compatible services, which may be battery cell testing, EMC wireless, global market access, depending on where you want to market your product in the world, and also some interoperability. All of these, we like to say, are one-stop shopping options that you may need for your overall market entry. So the primary information to enable UL8139 projects to actually get started is summarized in this slide. And I think of all the things, this is going to talk about what I've already said is the start really requires excellent support from our clients in terms of knowing what the confirmation of the project scope is that they're looking for, and then an identification with UL to understand all the needed samples and information that comes in to begin the project. I'd like to also finish on comments that confidentiality is a core value of UL. So we also require NDAs up front, and we treat that very seriously in terms of lab visits, applicant discussions, sample availability for other people that might enter the lab as visitors. So the certification process is interactive, and applicants will be in touch with the lead engineers and UL project handlers along the way. I'd like to point out here that product investigation in the UL review phase for battery management system is comprehensive as it has to be. And in terms of needs assessment, these are some of the things that we might ask for and will ask for. Certainly bill of materials, schematics, board component layouts, manuals, and this also includes samples that may or may not be off the product assembly line or potentially pre-faulted for us to be able to improve our testing efficiency. Again, it comes back to you guys know your products better than we do, so we'll talk about faults and testing and request those to come in, and we found out that's been a great time saver and minimizes sample needs. So all that would be discussed as part of the needs assessment with our clients and with your engineering teams and with our engineering team. Okay, so product investigation for the UL review phase for battery management system is comprehensive, as it has to be. This chart highlights key areas where failure could result in catastrophic consequences, and these are areas that we focus on very seriously, assessing the BMS for both normal use and foreseeable misusage, and we put it through everything that can happen in the world, dropping it in water, any of the other things that might cause a failure in the system. So here's three areas that I just wanted to focus on when we do our product investigation: unintentional activation, and this looks at the pressure switches, the independent actions required to engage the unit, accidental short circuiting, and then of course the venting evaluation. When in runaway, what is the failure direction? And as part of this test, we actually do intentionally cause the unit to fail, and we take visual and electrical information on how that failure occurs and in what direction the pressure force happens away from the user's face. So as you get through the testing and with successful compliance, authorization to actually use the UL mark is phase 3. And once compliance is determined, it's the payoff phase of the certification. The applicant is authorized to use the UL mark in agreed upon manufacturing locations. So I won't get into all the details here. A lot of this takes place with our label team, but after tests are completed, engineering will review the test results and complete a report to you. That report enables you to order UL labels and begin the application process to your product once a pre-inspection happens, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So as you look at these slides later, I have some contact information listed for our label center and some other information on online request information. So it's a very simple process to order labels to the manufacturing site once that UL8139 certification is achieved. Okay, so electronic devices come in a wide variety of design geometry. They vary from devices that very much resemble standard cigarettes to vaporizers with extremely unique profiles, I want to say. One of the questions we get is, where on the device is the label applied? The answer is technically nowhere on the device itself, but on the closest level of packaging to the enclosed device. And this is just kind of a rectangular visualization of where a label might go. But UL label can be applied to any side of the package, and it's also a decision of the manufacturer on how they want to apply it and how that is shown on their final packaging. So included in a successful UL8139 certification is an ongoing applicant agreement for follow-up inspections to assure that the certified device is being supplied to the market in identical structure as the evaluation process. And this is an area that folks know probably the least about, but anybody that works with UL knows this is a very common and normal post procedure. But UL requires the initial product inspection at the factory for all e-device applications, especially when it's the first time working with UL. First time application for a UL mark in a different category is applied for, and production in any new global factory or assembly report. And our engineering teams will actually go, in many cases this is China, but it could be multiple locations, multiple manufacturing locations, and we'll do the IPI, the initial product inspection. Let me just show you here just a quick. So the flow chart is here. This is for essentially preparation of the factory. And these are the various steps that the auditors will go through in the initial product inspection. And you can read through that, and we can certainly talk with you about that in more detail. But there's a pretty standard procedure that we would normally go through. Okay. After 8139 certification, field service inspections are managed by a dedicated UL team throughout the lifetime of the UL certification. During this phase, certified products will undergo regular inspections at the actual manufacturing facility or facilities, as I mentioned, to verify ongoing compliance and eligibility to apply the UL label to their products. UL calls this, for lack of a more creative name, our FUS, or our follow-up services, and there's an entire team at UL that will work on this, and you will deal with. And essentially, it's a inspection unannounced 4 times a year on a calendar year on a non-pre-notified inspection. And again, you can find out much more information on this in our follow-up services documentation. Here's an example of one of our document headers that we have on our website. So this chart gives us a really high-level view of where UL 8139 fits in the general supply chain for electronic vaping devices. So the green side, the components in green here are the final device assembly and manufacturing with the application of the UL holographic label to prove UL 8139 compliance. Global security and brand protection then would follow once that label is applied at the factory, and this is the FUS testing that I spoke about. And it travels all the way on to retailers and market surveillance in terms of security and authenticity of your product as an 8139 branded product. So I'd like to note again that track and trace at customs and security here is an area that UL works directly with authorities on to make sure that they can differentiate products, make sure that they can pick out any kind of non-certified products. They can understand where the counterfeits are, and brand protection and differentiation with retailers and consumers in Orange is one of the benefits and one of the key benefits of the 8139 certification to authorize that product. All right. So, very brief summary. We're here to answer questions and provide support along the way for any aspect of the process. These are the 4 steps that we just went through: submittal, investigation, authorization of the mark, and then the field service inspections. But we know that time to market and timing overall are critical to this ever-changing and growing segment. As a result, we wanted to highlight here some of the complementary services to UL8139 that you may not know, but we're one-stop shopping capabilities with UL that could save time and money for global market needs. So first of all, global market access, we call GMA, is a resource to assist the complex planning of bringing your products to current and emerging markets. Every market has a different regulatory need, and we have a team across the world that can help you with that. We frequently have talked to customers who are looking to market in 15 to 20 different countries. We talked about some of the growth areas, and GMA is the source that can highlight that and make sure that the customer understands what the needs are in each of those markets. So we consider this a very excellent resource for expansion. So UL can handle global market access, and with our teams, we can handle the testing, issue certifications, and obtain approvals for your customers' target markets. And also, as I mentioned, we have locations right now that are operating as a full support staff in 19 locations and 15 countries. So pretty much any country in the world, any location, we can do the research and let you know the information and what is needed. I have a link here as you go back to talk with our GMA team, or you can certainly access them through your project handlers and also through our business development people. So another service, EMC, wireless, and FCC testing are more often going hand in hand with electronic vaping devices that had interface electronics with computers or other data logging equipment. Vaping in medical applications is just one example of this growing performance design. And we have EMC labs around the world that are accredited and recognized by the needed regulatory agencies and governments. I wanted to throw this slide in. It's a picture of a large chamber for reference that could be used to test everything from automobile electronics to EMC and wireless performance for e-cigarettes. It's kind of a fascinating area to visit if you're at a UL location. So we mentioned interoperability testing, or IOP, and this testing verifies firmware compatibility with global platforms and ensures that it works with your intended receiving devices. UL has a mobile device library that includes virtually every phone or PDA in use today or ever used. So again, this is a reference point, but call us for more information specific to your device, and we can talk about this capability and potential usage with your specific situation. So maybe one of the most important slides in this deck is this one, describing the UL holographic label and counterfeit protection it offers. UL supports multifaceted approaches to brand protection and counterfeiting across the world. Consumer dangers and risks to brand protection are definite whys to certify your vaping devices. but one of the hows to actively protect a brand is authentication using a version of the UL label, confirming compliance with 8139 battery management system safety. A new service with the UL labeling includes full track and trace capability, as mentioned before, from the manufacturing floor all the way through to the retailers and to the end consumers. I don't have time in this presentation to review in detail here, but please reach out and our labeling teams can describe this benefit and how it works. Just a few statistics on belief trends of the global end users of any product as reported by Forbes in this case. I'll get the laser out of the way. In a retail setting, the message here is really in the title of the chart. Customers trust third-party claims more than brand claims. So in retail settings, a third-party claim verification clearly differentiates an e-cig device in a competitive market. You can take a look at the numbers here on the chart, but maybe just pause for a second and consider your own opinion on these points as an everyday consumer. Well, in summary, we hope that this webinar helped with a clear view of how a manufacturer would work with UL to earn UL8139 and other certifications for their electronic products. I also hope that it is evident that UL teams are here to walk you through every step along the way. Thank you so much for listening. Tana, do we have any questions?
Thank you, Art. We have a couple questions. The first one, how much do the labels cost once the certification is awarded?
Good question. Typical costs of the labels today are approximately 2 cents per label. That's ballpark. When you get into the track and trace labels, there's a little more technology involved, and we can talk about that. And it's slightly more, but obviously the value of that, and also the value of what you're doing today is the primary payoff on that. So labels are available in numbers of thousands at a time, and clearly on the ordering pages, when you get to that, you can learn how that's done. The orders are simple to place to a certified location, to an authorized location, manufacturing location, and to answer your question, it's about 2 cents a label.
Okay. Next question, how long does it take to complete a UL8139 evaluation of my device?
Excellent question. The answer is it depends. Each device and testing need is unique, but we're telling customers right now, typically 10 to 12 weeks after project acceptance, we talked about when the clock starts, and sample delivery to UL is met is a relative time. We certainly do things in a quicker time frame. The May webinar, if you look back in that, covers some of these logistics in detail. But again, anything that UL would request the customer to do in terms of pre-faulted leads, things like that, will dramatically affect that overall working time to get the evaluation completed.
Okay, we have one more question. How do you know which compatible services are required for the various global target markets?
Yeah, very short answer to that question, and the answer is just talk with us, share your target markets, what you're trying to do, where you're trying to go, what your goals are for the product, and device specifications, and we can coordinate all the needed services and recommendations that you would need to successfully venture out into that market.
All right, well, thank you, Art, for the informative presentation, and thank you all for attending and showing your interest. We hope you have a good day.